Welcome to Walking Tour of New York, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in New York with every episode. Each week, we'll travel to a different destination, from the streets of Manhattan, the Brooklyn waterfront, and the energy of Times Square to the Adirondack High Peaks, Finger Lakes wine country, Niagara Falls, the Hudson Valley, and hidden gems tucked away in small towns across this extraordinary place. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore New York. Picture Manhattan, the skyline, the crowds, the relentless energy of one of the densest cities on Earth. Now push that image all the way to the top of the map, past the glass towers of Midtown and the brownstones of Harlem, past Washington Heights and its Dominican bakeries, all the way to the very tip of the island where the Hudson River and the Harlem River converge. There, pressed between two rivers and the edge of the Bronx, you'll find something nobody told you was there: a forest, a real one, old, dark, tangled, smelling of leaf litter and river air, with glacial caves carved into schist outcroppings and tulip trees so tall they block the sky. This is Inwood Hill Park, and it is unlike anything else in New York City. The park covers nearly 196 acres at the northern tip of Manhattan, in the neighborhood of Inwood, part of Upper Manhattan, about 8 miles north of Midtown. It sits in the shadow of the George Washington Bridge's cables on the horizon, tucked against the Henry Hudson Parkway and the Harlem River Ship Canal. It is reachable from almost anywhere in the city, the end of the A train line putting you squarely in its orbit. But once you step through the tree line, the city, the whole jangling, insistent city, drops away. You're in something older than New York, much older. To understand Inwood Hill Park, you have to go back not hundreds, but thousands of years. The terrain you're walking through was shaped by the Wisconsin Glacier, an ice sheet that buried this part of North America under a mile of ice and then, roughly 10,000 years ago, retreated. It didn't go quietly. It left behind a landscape of caves, ridges, potholes, and exposed schist boulders, a rugged, folded topography you'd expect to find in the Adirondacks, not on a Manhattan street corner. The caves near the park's eastern slope were formed when glacial boulders tumbled and settled against one another, creating sheltered pockets in the rock. The glacial potholes you'll find scattered along the trails were drilled into the bedrock by stone-carrying eddies spinning beneath the melting ice. Nature's own drill press, working for centuries. Into this carved-out landscape, people came. The Lenape, whose name for their people meant something close to the original people, had been living in and around what is now New York for at least 10,000 years by the time any European set eyes on the place. Their name for this part of Upper Manhattan was Shorakapok, from the Algonquin, meaning roughly by the water, a perfectly practical description of a place pressed between two rivers. And Shorakapok wasn't a quiet corner of Lenape territory. It was, in a sense, their downtown. The area provided everything a community needed: fresh water, flat land for growing the Three Sisters, corn, beans, and squash, protection from winter winds by the surrounding hills, and generous access to the estuary for fishing eels, shad, and oysters. The shell middens, ancient mounds of discarded oyster shells, are still visible in places throughout the park. When you walk across them, you are literally stepping on the remnants of Lenape meals. The Lenape used these caves, the same rocky outcroppings you can walk up to today, as seasonal shelters, not year-round homes. In summer, when the rivers ran thick with shellfish and the forest offered berries and game, Shorakapok was a gathering place for larger groups. The caves provided natural refrigeration, their interiors hold a steady 52 degrees year-round, and shelter during sudden storms. They were useful, well-positioned, and well-remembered. Then, in 1609, Henry Hudson sailed up the river that would eventually bear his name, and the world the Lenape had built over millennia began to fracture. In 1626, according to a legend still commemorated in the park today, the Dutch governor Peter Minuit struck a deal, purchasing all of Manhattan from the chief of the Lenape Mannahatta people for trade goods, then worth about 60 Dutch guilders. Whether the transaction happened exactly here, nobody can say for certain, but the park preserves the tradition. Near the soccer fields, you'll find the Shorakapok Rock, a modest boulder with a plaque that marks the spot where that legendary exchange is believed to have taken place. Nearby once grew a massive tulip tree, said to have been planted by the Lenape to commemorate the transaction, that lived to 280 years and stood 165 feet tall before its death in 1938. The park kept the stump for years as a kind of living monument to the encounter. The caves themselves stayed largely quiet through the colonial era, but they came roaring back into public consciousness in 1890, when an engineer named Alexander Crawford Chenoweth stumbled across a peculiar rock formation not far from his uptown home. Chenoweth was no ordinary weekend wanderer. He was the man who had designed the base for the Statue of Liberty and the Croton Aqueduct. But on weekends, he swapped engineering for archaeology. He began to dig carefully in the soil of the cave floors, and what he found stunned him. Pottery shards, large ones, some as wide as a man's two hands, lay in small pockets of undisturbed sediment. A polished indigo blue flint axe head, a dark red clay pot 18 inches across, decorated with 9 rows of indentations made by a sharp stick near its rim. 6 complete vessels carefully assembled from fragments. The New York Sun covered the excavation in detail. Chenoweth's discoveries sparked a wave of interest among a generation of dedicated amateur archaeologists who descended on Inwood over the following decades. Reginald Pelham Bolton, William Lewis Calver, and others spent years excavating the park's caves and surrounding terrain, building a picture of Lenape life that professional institutions had barely begun to sketch. Their finds, pottery, tools, bone implements, human remains, shell and bone middens, now form an important part of our understanding of who lived on Manhattan before the Dutch arrived. Most of the caves have been sealed by the Park Service to protect what remains of the archaeological record, but you can stand in front of them, peer into the cool darkness, and feel the weight of all those thousands of years pressing quietly against you. The park's indigenous story didn't end with European colonization either. As late as the 1920s and 1930s, the caves at Inwood Hill were staffed by Native Americans who gave tours, ran a small library of books on American Indian history, and demonstrated traditional arts and crafts. Princess Naomi, a member of the Algonquin-speaking peoples, operated a Native American museum and store right here in the park. The Indian Life Reservation, an imperfect but genuine effort to keep indigenous culture visible in the heart of Manhattan, functioned within these very woods. Every year, the neighborhood still celebrates that connection. The annual Drums Along the Hudson Festival, held in the park in the warmer months, brings together Native American dancers, drummers, and community members from across the region for a powwow and multicultural gathering that draws thousands of visitors. If your visit coincides with it, don't miss it. Now let's actually walk the park. The main entrance off Payson Avenue near Dyckman Street brings you onto Bolton Road, the park's primary pedestrian path, formerly a carriage drive leading to one of the grand private estates that dotted Inwood in the 19th century. The wealthy built summer homes up here for the views and the air, and what you're walking on was once their private road. The park acquired these parcels between 1915 and the early 1940s and officially opened on May 8, 1926, with Native Americans participating in the opening ceremonies alongside more than 1,000 New Yorkers. From Bolton Road, the park spreads out in several directions, and there are 3 marked trails to choose from depending on your energy and ambition. The White Trail is the gentlest, 1.5 miles on paved paths, offering year-round views of the Hudson River and Spuyten-Duyvil Creek. A good choice if you want the scenery without the scramble. The Blue Trail runs about 1.7 miles on mostly paved paths and climbs enough to reward you with a lovely overlook of the Hudson and the New Jersey Palisades from Overlook Meadow. The Orange Trail, the one serious hikers tend to love, is 1.7 miles of moderate to vigorous effort that takes you off the pavement and into the heart of the Shorakapok Preserve, up through the old growth forest, past the glacial potholes, and up to the ridge where the park's oldest trees live. A significant stretch of the Orange Trail was built during the New Deal era by crews from the Works Progress Administration and the National Youth Administration, who between 1934 and 1941 installed natural rock staircases and Belgian block drainage channels that are still in use today. Look for them underfoot as you climb. They're remarkable feats of craft, as beautiful in their way as anything the park contains. That old growth forest deserves a moment. In 2024, the Shorakapok Preserve within Inwood Hill Park was officially inducted into the Old Growth Forest Network, a designation recognizing it as one of the last remaining intact ancient forests in the entire northeastern United States. In the middle of Manhattan, the forest contains towering red oaks, some of the largest tulip trees in the city, and a hemlock that will stop you in your tracks. These are not decorative plantings, they are survivors. Trees that have simply been here outlasting everything the city threw at them. Walking among them with the canopy filtering the sky into green and gold, you genuinely lose track of where you are. The antique WPA street lamps still standing along some of the trails, broken, unlit, colonized by moss, add a surreal note that somehow deepens the experience rather than diminishing it. Near the base of the eastern ridge, you'll find the caves. The main cluster of Lenape rock shelters sits tucked into the hillside, visible from the path but set back enough to feel tucked away. Some are little more than overhangs, slanted slabs of schist leaning together. Others are deeper pockets, cool and dim, the kind of space where you lower your voice instinctively. Stand here and try to picture the summer camps that filled this hollow for thousands of years. The fires, the smell of roasting fish, the sounds of a community doing what communities do. The Park Service has placed interpretive signage at the site, which helps, but the real interpreter is the landscape itself. Keep your eyes on the ground as you wander the park, and you'll occasionally notice something pale and irregular embedded in the soil. Oyster shells, remnants of those ancient Lenape feasts, still surfacing centuries later. The park's geology is full of surprises. Marble, schist, and limestone all appear in the rock formations, a variety unusual even by New York standards. The Dyckman Street Fault runs along the park's southern edge, and as recently as 1989, it produced a small earthquake. Inwood Hill Park sits on active ground in every sense of the word. Down by the water, the park shifts character. The western edge along the Hudson was created using landfill in 1928, giving the park a peninsula-like extension with kayak and canoe launches, a dog run, and a barbecue area, one of the few places in Manhattan where barbecuing is actually permitted in a city park. The Inwood Farm restaurant occupies the northernmost dining perch in Manhattan, right near the park entrance on 218th Street. Along the Harlem River side, the Nature Center sits on what was once a peninsula attached to the Bronx before the digging of the Harlem River Ship Canal separated it in the 1890s. The center reopened in 2024 after sustaining flood damage during Superstorm Sandy in 2012. Next to it is Muscota Marsh, Manhattan's last surviving saltwater marsh, brackish in tidal, home to mamachogs, mussels, crabs, and a rotating cast of waterbirds. Birdwatchers come to Inwood Hill Park from across the 5 boroughs and beyond. The park is one of the best places in New York City to spot a bald eagle, thanks in part to a reintroduction program launched in 2002. Red-tailed hawks, peregrine falcons, and American kestrels work the thermals above the ridge. During migration, the park's wooded sections funnel an extraordinary variety of songbirds through on their way north or south. If you bring binoculars, you'll be rewarded. One destination that pairs beautifully with Inwood Hill Park is the Cloisters, the Metropolitan Museum of Art's medieval satellite, set in the adjacent Fort Tryon Park just to the south. The Cloisters incorporates actual stone elements from 5 medieval European monasteries, including cloistered courtyards shipped stone by stone from France and Spain. Its collection of medieval tapestries, illuminated manuscripts, and carved stonework is extraordinary, and its gardens, with views out over the Hudson to the Palisades, are among the finest in the city. A visit to both parks makes for a genuinely remarkable day in northern Manhattan, moving from one of the oldest human stories on the island to one of the most ambitious acts of cultural preservation in American museum history. For food, the neighborhood of Inwood delivers warmly. The dining scene here is rooted in the Dominican Republic. This stretch of Upper Manhattan is sometimes called the Little Dominican Republic, and the cooking reflects it. La Casa del Mofongo, famous for its menu of more than 30 variations on the iconic fried plantain dish, is a neighborhood institution on Dyckman Street, the main commercial and social corridor just below the park. Galicia tapas brings a Spanish sensibility, grilled octopus, paella, Iberian wines on a sunny corner patio, to the neighborhood. For something more casual, Cachapas y Mas serves Venezuelan cachapas and what many people consider the best patacon sandwich in New York City, and they're open until 2 a.m. Garden Cafe offers a relaxed backyard American-style option, perfect after a morning on the trails. The Hudson, a seasonal waterfront spot at the Dykeman Marina, has the kind of river views that make even a simple pulled pork slider taste better. Open May through September. For lodging, visitors typically look to nearby Washington Heights, where the Radio Hotel offers a vibrant, culturally grounded stay with a central Upper Manhattan location. The Hotel Mocha NYC puts you within easy reach of both Inwood and the Cloisters. If you don't mind a short trip across the George Washington Bridge, Fort Lee in New Jersey offers additional options with easy access back to the park. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring New York. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond New York, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and happy trails.